We've previously covered the Canaanite-Phoenician cities of Sidon and Tyre, and now, as promised, onto arguably the most famous of them all, Byblos. Before we begin, I'd like to thank the sponsor of this video, Magellan TV, a documentary streaming service founded by filmmakers. In part because of this, Magellan TV has some of the richest and most varied history content available anywhere. Whether it's ancient, modern, war, earth, or biographies, Magellan TV's got it. One such series that I've recently been watching is Nile, 5,000 Years of History, where historian Bettany Hughes travels throughout Egypt from one end of the Nile to the other to uncover and understand Egypt's long history. This 4-part series goes way beyond just the pyramids and Luxor to many of the sites you may not have even known about. I myself have been learning a lot and can't get enough of it and other programs on Egypt that Magellan has to offer. And that's just one series. There are hundreds like it dealing with history, science, true crime, travel, nature, over 3,500 hours of content. And every week, 15 to 20 new hours of content in 4K and HD are added to Magellan TV, so you'll never run out of quality documentaries to watch. You can view Magellan TV anytime, anywhere, on your TV, laptop, tablet, or smartphone. Compatible with Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, Google Play, and iOS. Check the link in the video description for a 1-month free trial. After that, if you wish to continue, it's just $4.99 a month. If you love documentaries, then try out Magellan TV risk-free today. Located about 60 kilometers north of the Lebanese capital of Beirut, what's today the modern-day city of Byblos was in antiquity one of the oldest and most vibrant commercial ports in the ancient world, and its story is a long one. Due to this, we'll mostly focus on the city's Bronze and early Iron Age history. Little was known about Byblos' early history until serious excavations were undertaken by French archaeologists between 1921 to 1924. The little knowledge of the ancient city that was known came mostly through literary, commercial, and diplomatic texts, including the now famous Amarna letters, which we'll get to a bit later on. In Akkadian and Egyptian texts, the city was called Gubla, while in ancient Hebrew, it was known as Gebal. Its current and most well-known name, Byblos, is derived from the Greek word bublos, meaning papyrus scroll. The French archaeologists who first excavated the most ancient parts of the city determined that the site had been inhabited since at least the 6th millennium BC. It's at these deepest layers that archaeologists discovered the remains of pottery and rudimentary stamp seals. Though interesting discoveries, such objects tell us nothing about the political history of what at the time must have been little more than a small village. The simple life for the settlement's inhabitants, who made their living by fishing and small-scale farming, continued nearly unchanged for the next few millennia, though by 3500 BC, it was clear that they had had at least some contact with the people of the Uruk culture of southern Mesopotamia, as can be seen by the Uruk-style stamp and cylinder seals that have been discovered in and around Byblos. However, it's really around 3000 BC that the settlement that would become the great city of Byblos took shape and began to develop into a trade emporium that connected the Levant with Anatolia, Mesopotamia, and most notably, Egypt. While records for the first two regions are scarce, plenty of references to Byblos, or Gubla as it was called, appear in Egyptian Old Kingdom texts. It's from Byblos that cedar wood was loaded onto ships destined for Egypt. Around 2800 to 2700 BC, large, massive walls were erected around the city with at least 2 known gates, which scholars call the Sea Gate and the Land Gate. The most important building dating to this period was the temple of the goddess Malat Gebal, aka the Lady of Byblos. Though in ruins today, the temple is believed to have been one of the first monumental structures ever built in the land of ancient Canaan. About 2 centuries later, a second L-shaped temple was built opposite to the temple of Balat-Gebal. Both, though, were destroyed about 600 to 800 years later by Amorite invaders. However, given Byblos' strategic location and commercial importance, the city and its religious institutions were rebuilt by the time of the Mid-Bronze Age, around 1600 BC. The Balat-Gebal complex now contained at least 26 obelisks in its courtyard, which scholars are almost certain was due to Egyptian influence. Not only did the lucrative trade with Egypt resume, but new commercial links with Crete's Minoan civilization were also opened up, as can be seen by fragments of Minoan ceramics discovered in and around Byblos. As far as we know, Byblos was politically independent during this time, but after 1550 BC, the city, which for millennia already had commercial ties to the Kingdom of the Nile, became a vassal of the pharaohs of Egypt's New Kingdom. We know a great deal about this period due to many diplomatic and trade texts dating to this time, especially the now famous collection of royal correspondence known as the Amarna letters, in which Byblos and its mayor king, Rib-Hadda, appear quite often. Along with Byblos, Rib-Hadda was also in charge of other towns that surrounded his city, most of which were often under attack by men who answered to the warlord Abdi-Ashurta or his son, Aziru. Of the over 300 Amarna letters, 60 are attributed to Rib-Hadda and are mostly addressed to Pharaoh Akhenaten. In these letters, he informs the pharaoh of the malevolent actions of other regional actors against him and his city, along with requesting aid from the Egyptian king to protect Byblos from its many enemies. In one of his letters, Rib-Hadda addresses the pharaoh as follows: "May the lady of the city of Byblos grant strength to the king, my lord. At the feet of my lord, my sun god, 7 times and 7 times have I fallen. May the king know that it is well with the city of Byblos, the loyal handmaiden of the king. But the hostility of the Hapiru troops against me is very fierce. So may the king, my lord, not keep silent concerning the city of Sumur, lest everyone join the Hapiru troops. Very fierce is the hostility against us. So may the king not keep silent concerning his cities." Rib-Hadda wrote many similar letters warning the king of the dangers to his city and requesting troop reinforcements, but to no avail. When he failed to get the attention of the pharaoh, he tried writing directly to Akhenaten's vizier. To Haya, the vizier, the message of Rib-Hadda: "At your feet I have fallen. May Amun, the god of the pharaoh, your lord, give you honor in the presence of the king, your lord. Look, you are a wise man. The king knows this, and because of your wisdom, the king sent you as commissioner. Why have you kept silent and not spoken to the king that he should send regular troops, that they should take the city of Sumur? Who is Abdi-Ashurta, the slave, the dog, that he should take the land of the king for himself?" Unfortunately, Rib-Hadda never got the support from Egypt that he requested, and eventually was forced to flee, or perhaps turned over to the rulers of Sidon by Aziru, the son of Abdi-Ashurta. For the rest of the Bronze Age, and perhaps due in part to a long-standing treaty between Egypt and the Hittite Empire, Byblos was able to prosper under Egyptian rule, at least until the events of the Late Bronze Age collapse. Now, I know we've talked about these events in other programs, including those regarding other Phoenician cities, such as Tyre and Sidon, so I won't go into the details here. But, like Tyre and Sidon, all indications lead to the conclusion that Byblos remained relatively unharmed during a time when most other major cities and the surrounding countryside in the eastern Mediterranean were being devastated by the roving bands of migrants and marauders that historians call the Sea Peoples. Whether Byblos' rulers simply paid off the Sea Peoples to leave them alone hasn't been conclusively proven, but regardless, the city managed to survive, which gave its enterprising population a great advantage when the dust had settled. Byblos soon rocketed into the stratosphere as one of the wealthiest and most important commercial centers in the eastern Mediterranean. Unfortunately, few remains of the city from this period have been uncovered, and so most of our knowledge about what was going on comes from the textual sources of others, most notably Assyrian archives and inscriptions. For example, the Assyrian king Tiglath-Pileser I, who reigned between 1114 to 1076 BC, reports receiving large amounts of tribute from Byblos' king. The city also appears in the famous Egyptian story known as the Tale of Wen Amun. Though the papyri fragments we have date to about 1000 BC, the events of the story may have taken place a century earlier. In the story, an Egyptian merchant named Wen Amun is sent to the city of Byblos in order to obtain its prized cedar wood, but upon arrival, he's received with scorn. Byblos' king tells him that if he wants to obtain the cedar wood, he'll have to pay some ungodly sum for what in the past had often been a gift for Egypt's temples and pharaohs. Wen Amun ends up staying in the city for about a year before embarking back to Egypt, but what happens afterward isn't known because the story's conclusion is missing. Similar to other Canaanite-Phoenician city-states, Byblos fell under Assyrian domination after 870 BC, which was around the time that the Neo-Assyrian king Ashurnasirpal II conquered the city. This, though, didn't sit well with several of the city's kings, who at times resisted their unwanted overlords. Most Assyrian kings, though, who valued wealthy Byblos' contributions to the state treasury, granted its rulers a great deal of autonomy, and for the most part, Assyrian rule provided a period of stability for the city that allowed it to prosper overall. After the fall of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, around 610 BC, Byblos eventually came under Babylonian and then, around 539 BC, Persian rule. There's a famous stela from the Persian period with the depiction of a king of Byblos named Yiha-Milk, where he's wearing Persian clothing and receiving blessings from the goddess Balat. Though the Persians ruled over the city for about 200 years, in 332 BC, Byblos submitted without resistance to Alexander of Macedonia, also known as Alexander the Great, and after his death would go on to become part of the Seleucid Empire. By then, though, Byblos' Canaanite-Phoenician character was rapidly being replaced with an increasingly Hellenized one, and by the time the Romans got there a few centuries later, this unique identity had all but vanished. So, I hope that this short program gave you a glimpse into some of the more interesting aspects of Byblos' history. There's a lot more on the way, so stay tuned. Thanks so much to all of you for watching. I'd also really like to thank GrandKek69, Jaap de Graaf, Pasta Frola, Michael Lewis, Danielle Allen, Danny Van Eck, WenXTV, Robert Morgan, Frank, Tim Lane, Sebastian Hurtado Correa, Michael Trudell, Leader Titan, Micah G, John Scarberry, Andrew Bomer, Monty Grimes, Franz Robbins, Brendan Redman, Faridun Dadachanji, Jimmy Daruwala, Anahita Debu, Gulistan Debu, Sher Kam, Farhad Kama, and all of the channel's patrons on Patreon for helping to support this and all future content. Check out the benefits to being a Patreon member, and if you'd like to join, feel free to click the link in the video description. You can also follow History with Sai on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. as well as listen to special audio programs on the History with Cy podcast. Thanks again, and stay safe.